Level 1, the beloved. You are 6 years old. Your mother's name is Rachel, and the way your father says it, soft, like something he is afraid to lose, already tells you that you are made of something precious. You grow up in Canaan, in the hills between Shechem and Hebron, where the grass smells like dust and rain at the same time. Jacob holds you differently than he holds the others. You feel it in the weight of his hands.
You are the son of his old age, the son of Rachel, and there is something in that which makes the air shift when you walk into a room. Your brothers feel it too. You just do not know yet what that feeling costs. Level 2, the coat. You are 17 years old. Your father calls you to him one morning and places something across your shoulders that stops every conversation in the camp. It is a long robe, ketonet, pasim, a tunic of many colors, a garment for a prince, for someone who does not bend at the waist under the sun. Your brothers work the fields. You carry reports back to your father. You think this is loyalty. You do not understand yet that a coat like this is not a gift. It is a target. You wear it anyway. It is warm. It is beautiful. It is everything you did not know to be afraid of. Then the dreams come. A field, your sheaf rising, your brother's sheaves bowing around it. You wake with your heart pressing against your ribs and make the mistake that 17-year-olds have always made. You tell them. The Hebrew word they use for hate after that, sane, does not mean simple dislike. It means to treat someone as an enemy. Even your father rebukes you when the second dream comes, the sun and moon and 11 stars all bowing, but he keeps the matter in his heart, turning it over like a stone, examining the underside. You carry the dreams because you do not know what else to do with them. Level 3, the pit. You are still 17. Your father sends you north to check on your brothers in Shechem. You find them farther on in Dothan, and they see you coming from a long distance, the coat giving you away across the hills like a signal fire. By the time you arrive, the sentence has already been decided. They strip the coat from you. The sound of it, fabric against skin, the gasp of it, is the sound of your entire life up to this point being removed in one motion. They throw you into a cistern, no water, just rock walls and a circle of sky 30 feet above, and your brothers sitting down to eat bread. You can hear them chewing. You scream. Genesis 37, verse 24. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. In a pit with water, you drown quickly. In a dry pit, you wait. Then the sound of camels. Merchants heading toward Egypt. Judah's voice above you, negotiating. 20 pieces of silver, less than a good donkey. The rope they lower is not mercy. It is just a different kind of sentence. You are pulled up into the light and handed to strangers. The last thing you see of Canaan is the backs of your brothers' heads as they turn toward home to dip your coat in goat's blood. Level 4, Potiphar's house. You are 17 to 27 years old. Egypt hits you like a wall. The language, the heat, the smell of the Nile, green and thick, nothing like the dry hills of Canaan. You are sold to Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's guard, but something follows you. Genesis 39 says it plainly. The Lord was with Joseph. You learn Egyptian administration, how power moves through a household. Potiphar promotes you until you are managing his entire estate, fields, finances, every ledger. Then there is his wife. She is not subtle. Day after day, the same demand. Day after day, the same refusal. You understand something most people only learn in retrospect. Indeed, a betrayal is something you do to yourself first. How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? You tell her. You say God, not Potiphar. That detail matters. One day she grabs your garment, you run, the coat stays in her hand. This is the second coat you have lost. Like the first, it becomes evidence against you. Potiphar throws you into prison. Level 5, the prison. You are 27 to 30 years old. The floor is stone. The air is stale and cold the way underground places are cold even in Egypt. You have stopped counting the days the way people count days when they expect to leave. You count them the way people count days when they have accepted where they are. The Lord was with Joseph here too. The prison keeper looks at you the way Potiphar did, and soon you are managing the prison, running the prison. You have learned in 13 years that competence is the only form of dignity that cannot be taken from you. 2 men arrive, Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker, both in disgrace. They dream on the same night, and in the morning their faces carry the weight of it. You ask them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." 3 branches, 3 days. The cupbearer will be restored. 3 baskets, 3 days. The baker will hang. You tell them both without softening the second one. "Remember me when it is well with you," you ask the cupbearer. "Mention me to Pharaoh." He is restored. He forgets you. 2 more years pass. Level 6, before Pharaoh. You are 30 years old. Somewhere above you, Pharaoh is having nightmares he cannot shake. 7 fat cows devoured by 7 starving ones. 7 healthy heads of grain consumed by 7 scorched ones. He wakes both times with the dreams sitting on his chest like a physical weight. Every magician in Egypt is useless. The cupbearer remembers. He says your name in Pharaoh's court, and the door of your cell opens. You shave. Egyptians do not wear beards, and you have learned which customs matter. You change your clothes and you go up. The throne room is everything the prison was not. Linen walls, gold on every surface, incense. Pharaoh looks at you the way a god looks at something he is not sure exists. "It is not in me," you say before he can ask. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. He tells you the dreams, and you know immediately 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine so severe the abundance will be forgotten. You tell him this then, and this surprises even you. You tell him what to do. Store 1/5 of every harvest. Build granaries in every city. Find a discerning man to manage it. "Can we find a man like this?" Pharaoh says to his court, "in whom the Spirit of God is?" He puts his signet ring on your finger, gold chain, fine linen, an Egyptian name, Zaphanath-Paneah, and a chariot. You are 30 years old, 13 years since Dothan. You are now second only to Pharaoh in all of Egypt. Level 7, the years of hunger. You are 39 years old. You built the granaries. You stored the grain like sand by the sea during the 7 years of plenty. Your sons were born, Manasseh, because God made you forget your hardship, and Ephraim, because God made you fruitful in the land of your suffering. Then the famine opens over the earth. People come from every direction. You manage the greatest food distribution the ancient world has ever seen. And one morning, standing at the entrance to the storehouse, you look up. 10 men, Canaanite clothing, older than you remember, bowing their faces to the ground before you. You recognize them immediately. They do not recognize you at all. You speak through an interpreter. You keep Simeon as a hostage and send the others home with a command: bring back your youngest brother. While they think no one is listening, they say to each other in Hebrew, your language, the language they don't know, you still speak. In truth, we are guilty concerning our brother. We saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. Genesis 42, verse 21. 13 years. And they have never stopped hearing you in that pit? You turn away from them and weep. You cannot let them see it yet. Level 8, the reveal. You are 39 years old. They come back with Benjamin, your full brother, your mother's son, the only one of the 12 who did not stand over that pit. You test them one more time. You plant your silver cup in Benjamin's bag. You accuse him of theft and threaten to keep him as a slave. And Judah, the man who once set your price at 20 pieces of silver, steps forward and offers himself instead. He says he cannot return to his father without the boy. The grief would kill him. That is what you needed to see. Not repayment, not an apology. Proof that the men who threw you into a hole have become men who would climb into one themselves to protect someone they love. You clear the room of every Egyptian servant. I am Joseph. 3 words in Hebrew. Ani Yosef. And the world stops. They cannot answer you. Terror, shame, confusion, all of it on 10 faces at once. You look at them and feel something it takes you a moment to name. It is not triumph. It is quieter than that and more permanent. Come near to me, you say. They step closer, trembling. I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. Genesis 45, verses 4 and 5. You fall on Benjamin's neck and weep. He weeps on yours. You kiss every brother and weep with them. And after that, after the weeping, after the naming of what happened, your brothers talk with you. After that, level 9, the last promise. You are 110 years old. Your father lived 17 years in Egypt, long enough to bless Pharaoh, long enough to cross his arms and lay the greater blessing on your younger son Ephraim. Old Jacob, still choosing the unexpected one, right to the end. Long enough to ask you to carry his bones back to Canaan. You honor this. You lead a great procession out of Egypt and bury him where he asked. After Jacob dies, your brothers are afraid the old mercy will expire. They send a message. Your father commanded us before he died. Please forgive us. You weep when you read it. Not at the injury, at the fact that after everything, they still do not understand what happened between you and God. Do not fear, you tell them, for the last time. Am I in the place of God? You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. Genesis 50, verse 20. You die at 110. Before you go, you make them swear, and their children after them, that when God brings Israel out of Egypt, they will carry your bones with them. You know they will leave someday. You have always known this. They embalm you and place you in a coffin in Egypt. And there you wait, 400 years, until a man named Moses keeps the promise, and your bones make the journey back to Canaan. The pit in Dothan is still there if you go looking, just a hole in the ground in a field north of Jerusalem. No monument, no marker, nothing to tell you that from that emptiness came the grain that fed the world, the forgiveness that held a family together, and the proof, sealed in one life from the first dream to the last breath, that what men intend for ruin, God can intend for something else entirely. And now you are